Dan Perry joins us now. Dan, it's good to talk to you again. You're a political commentator, you're former head of Associated Press in Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and you're joining us from Tel Aviv today. Give us your thoughts about Israel's new military plan. So again, broadly, it includes occupying all of Gaza, forcibly displacing hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, and calling up, which has begun, tens of thousands of reservists.
Well, this plan would be the polar opposite of what Israel agreed to in January, which would be to end the war in exchange for all the hostages. Netanyahu always faced a binary choice. This choice is being dictated by the far right because of Netanyahu's plausible fears that they will abandon his coalition and bring him down should he not resume the war, basically, or at least not continue it. Now, most of the Israeli public, A, opposes this move, B, thinks it's political, and C, thinks that it endangers the hostages rather than improves the chances of recovering them. But the wrinkle in what would be a clean narrative is that most of the Israeli public also supports the idea of eradicating Hamas and removing them from power in Gaza. So Netanyahu does have some leeway. The plan is widely seen by experts in Israel as calamitous, not only because it will lead to further loss of life on all sides and endanger the hostages, but also because a permanent occupation of Gaza, which is what at least some of the members of Netanyahu's coalition dream of, and indeed also resettlement of Gaza with Jews, would be so costly and so disruptive and so wrong in almost every conceivable way that it may not work out. And one possible way out is that this really can't go ahead without Trump's green light. And they've already said that they will delay implementation of it until mid-May or late May after Trump's visit to the UAE, to Qatar, and to Saudi Arabia. I have more than an impression that there is a school of thought that during this trip, Trump, in addition to real estate deals and maybe strategic arrangements with Saudi Arabia and whatnot, and tariff discussions, will try to get the Arabs to improve the Egypt-backed plan from a month or two ago, which would envision a whole different future for Gaza, which would involve indeed an end to the war, Hamas stepping back somehow, and Israel getting back the hostages, maybe even normalization for Israel with Saudi Arabia. All that would be difficult for Netanyahu to reject if it was sweetened just a little bit. And I think the main missing piece to basically force Netanyahu to accept it would be a more credible solution to the Hamas dilemma. Some version of disarming Hamas, perhaps exile for its leadership, maybe incorporation of some Hamas units into the PA system, a very robust role for the Gulf Arabs in policing Gaza, things of this nature.
So, Dan, this is something I was going to ask you about. When there are some dots that maybe or maybe shouldn't be. Maybe should be connected, maybe shouldn't be connected, but you've sort of started going in that direction. If you look at the fact that the details of the plan actually haven't been formally announced, most of it is coming from leaks or from unnamed sources. You look at that, you look at the fact that there isn't an official start date to the plan yet. There's a lot of I mean, the broad picture is out there, but a lot of the details of implementation are not out there. There's that, and there's what you mentioned, the fact that this does not start, according to Israel, until Trump comes to the region. And there's an unnamed defense source saying to Reuters, there's a window of opportunity there, that maybe we can get a deal when Trump is in the region, a ceasefire and captive release deal. In other words, maybe this plan never ends up going into effect. Do you think, therefore, this could be a pressure tactic more than anything else?
I agree with you, sir. Not only because one defense official suggested it, but also because logic points in that direction. The vast majority of Israelis, and pretty much all of the security establishment, does not want this because a permanent occupation of Gaza is widely perceived as a nightmare, and the idea of expelling the population is immoral and absurd, and it simply won't happen. So that is a forever guerrilla war in which Israelis will die, Palestinians will die, the hostages will die. Almost no one wants it, except for Netanyahu's far-right partners, and maybe Netanyahu. It's widely perceived in Israel as a political choice and a war that doesn't need to happen. But they do need some way out of this, and I think it goes the way that we're both saying. by Trump arriving in the region, coming up along with the Arab partners with an improved plan that addresses the real problem of Hamas remaining armed in Gaza to effectively control it no matter what. And then maybe we see something different. Maybe Netanyahu's coalition doesn't even fall because such a situation would be so popular in Israel that the opposition would be forced to throw him a lifeline and maybe set an agreed date for elections a year from now or something. It may be a far more positive way out of this for Netanyahu himself, because right now he's going down the path that leads to not just international condemnation, to legal troubles of every kind, that the only place he can go to is Azerbaijan, and great unpopularity in Israel. And I repeat, it flirts with absolute immorality, and make no mistake, that is not popular in Israel.
Does it? Are you afraid of where it would take Israel if the army does go back into Gaza, want to occupy the whole territory? I'll just remind our viewers of the words of the finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, who has said, we will finally occupy the Gaza Strip. That's a direct quote. Don't be afraid of the word occupation, which, of course, it already is under international law. You and I have discussed this before. But the question is, are you afraid of where this might take Israel if the plan is implemented?
The vast majority of Israel, the people in Israel, do not support this. Smotrich, who you mentioned, absolutely does. But his level of support in the poll that I saw yesterday was 3%. And the majority of the people in that same poll said they thought this was a mistake in every way, including as regards the lives of the hostages. So yes, people in Israel are afraid of this. They oppose it. They simply don't want to be saddled with the occupation of Gaza, 2 million people and more who mostly hate them and who can be expected to support an insurgency against them. It's more loss of life. It's for Israelis seen also as demographically unwise because they want to be a Jewish majority state. And the permanent occupation of millions of Palestinians more runs counter to all that. So it's not a popular move, with the caveat, as I said before, that people also are not particularly happy with ending the war with Hamas remaining in power in Gaza. They think, and I agree with this, they think this is bad for Israel and bad for the Palestinians both.
All right, Dan Perry, thank you very much for joining us on the Al Jazeera NewsHour.
Pleasure.